Hi, my name is Joel. In this episode of Unplugged, I talk to Rik Vera. After an extensive career in general management, sales and marketing, Rik changed his course. He is now a worldwide keynote speaker, boardroom advisor, and renowned thought leader on the topics of extreme customer centricity, innovation in the digital era, and business model change. I love Rik for his clarity, his way of looking at reality, and the way he inspires leaders and companies with his insights. In this Unplugged, I talk with Rik about his purpose, the importance of chaos, and the winning companies of the future. I think you're a great observer of what's happening in the world today, and you're able to translate your insights to leaders and companies. My question is, when you observe yourself, what do you feel is your purpose? What is it that drives you to do what you do?
The thing about I do today is what I've been doing all the time, except the fact that it's my profession, and it didn't used to be my profession. It's a very personal one, and maybe it's the first time I talk about it in public, but I've always felt like, more or less like an alien in this life. So if you're an alien, or if you feel like an alien in this life, you're interested in how this life functions, in how people function, in how people's relationships function, and that relates to how companies function in the world as well. When I worked for companies, I never had the feeling that I worked in a company. I don't know how to say that, but I was looking upon myself and upon my function and functionality within that company. So I've always had, by definition, that ability to observe the world and to decompose what I saw, to try to find out the relationships between the separate elements.
So it was the essence of what you did all
It was the essence of what I did in order to, and that sounds so big, in order to survive, or to lead a life. And maybe that's what other people do. You don't know what other people think, but that's how I interpreted my being here. So I've always done that. And I think it was my strength in business life, because I was never into it. I always looked upon it, and now it's my profession, so I'm kind of, this is coming home for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So your purpose is to be the observer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be kind of, and kind of neutral observer. I don't like to judge, I like to observe. And I always like to, I never try to find the truth in something, because the truth is then it's fixed. When I position something, when I talk about something, it's never with the intention, okay, this is it, and believe me. It's more like, this could be it, and try to come up with the alternative, because that is going to enrich my perception of that happening, or of that thing, or of that type of relationship.
But when it comes about being neutral, in your book you say, by visualizing the future, you can create a new reality. Yeah. Are you neutral when it comes to the reality we are going to create with each other, or do you have an opinion about it? What is the reality that you would like to create or co-create?
It's a mix of neutral. The elements are neutral. Of course, you always start, especially when you visualize the future. And we know for sure that the future that we live in for the moment will be highly influenced by technology. But technology is nothing new. People and humanity that evolves is nothing new. And yeah, I start from a set of values and a set of beliefs, so that's not neutral. And I'm a strong believer, by definition, of the fact that in the end, mankind always uses, in the end, a new technology to the best of mankind. Like every technology call it AI now. AI can be abused and AI can be used. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be abused, but in the end, that is going to be of good use for mankind. So yeah, when I visualize the future, that's not neutral. There's a set of rules, a set of values in my head that always tend to believe in that science, let's call it science and not technology, science leads to a better mankind in the end. Yeah.
So you're positive about our future?
I'm positive about our future, yeah. Not all the time. There's a couple of things in the outside world right now that I don't like and that keep me awake at night to some extent. But I do believe that in the end, like the long run, mankind always finds solutions for stuff.
And why is it that you are that optimist?
I think that we have kind of the obligation to be an optimist. I think that if everybody is an optimist, then good things happen.
Do you have an idea about the timelines we're talking about when you talk about the integration of technology and humanity?
Yeah, I have a fixed answer for that. The fixed answer is faster. Yeah, the fixed answer is, do you think it's going to be 2035 or 2045? My answer is always, it's going to be faster than that. I think we always underestimate the speed of change. Because most elements that we see in the change are very incremental, and our brain is not capable of coping with little incremental changes because we hardly see them. And then it's only when we look back that we realize how much something has changed. I think that by definition we underestimate the speed of change that's going to happen in the future. So my answer is faster.
And what do you think will change in the way that businesses are led in a technology-driven world?
I think one of the biggest changes in humanity as such in the last 50 years, now the last 15 years, is, you can give it a whole set of names, but it's the network. It's the fact that we live for the first time that humanity is becoming a network. That there are, for the moment, 4 billion people connected. And I think we still don't really understand what it means. We still cannot really cope with what it means. We cannot really predict what's going to give us in the future, but we all know it's going to be huge. And it's unseen. It's the first time in history. And if you realize what the printing has done for humanity, then I think we have no idea what this network means for humanity. But talking about businesses, that means that the business environment is changing completely. And I like to compare the network. The network is your customers. If you're a business, you always have customers. Your customers are a network. And I compare a network with a cloud of birds. You know that cloud of birds? You can imagine that. The movements that a cloud of birds are making is completely unpredictable. And nevertheless, you can do experiments. If you do that experiment on a computer and you give the computer like 10,000 dots, you only need 3 principles to recreate the movements that cloud of birds is making. The first principle is close formation. So you have to fly close together. Yeah. The hyperconnection, that is the social, the fact that people are connected, but not too close because then you bump into each other. So you fly close formation. The second is the second dot always tries to follow the first dot. You always try to follow the dot that's in front of you. So that's the second principle. And there's the third principle is every dot tries to be in the middle of the cloud, which is the safest place. And that 3 principles together create a completely unpredictable cloud. So if the cloud is unpredictable, then businesses in the world, but especially in the West, used to make a picture of the situation. You make a picture of the situation, that's the situation. And then you develop a business model that fits that picture. And we've been very good at that. And all of the management books that we have written, that we read so far, are about how do you create that picture and how do you fulfill that picture. I call that fast architecture. You make that picture and then you develop a business model to fit into that frame, to fit into that picture. But you can no longer frame that cloud of birds, because if you frame it, the very moment you start your fast architecture and you end up in that frame, maybe the whole cloud of birds is already somewhere else. So by definition, agile is not a hype word, it's not a buzzword, it's something that companies need to do. You need to be able to constantly follow that cloud of birds. So that means that instead of fast architecture, we have to go for slow architecture. And slow architecture is you have to adapt all the time your big picture. Okay, I want to get into that cloud, I want to be in tune with that cloud. That's your aim, that's your purpose, but you have to adapt all the time to that fast-moving cloud. So that means that companies used to be inside out by definition, because you work towards that frame, need to be outside in.
I'm a strong believer that on a personal level there is a lot of inside out as well. So like you talk about yourself as being an observer, so you can bring something to the world that's inside out in some kind of way. And I understand what you're saying about companies having to be outside in.
Yeah.
As a human being or leader, you have preferences, or you are curious to certain aspects in the world. Like you are not, well, I think you're a very interested person you're interested in a lot of things, but still you're framed in a certain kind of way to prefer certain types of work or prefer certain types of businesses or sectors or whatever. So there's still an inside-out perspective that has to meet that outside-in perspective.
Absolutely, you are who you are. I think if that's what I said. If you are passionately curious, then by definition you know who you are. You know, it's always the perception of reality is an important element, and how you perceive reality is, to a big extent, is defined by who you are, because who you are defines your perception of reality. So even if you're outside in, the filter between the outside in is who you are, and that's inside out. That is why scientific papers, the first thing I look at is who's the author and what is he and what is he like, because that tells you a lot about the scientific outcome of the paper.
Exactly.
Yeah. We always start from assumptions, whether we like it or not. We're not neutral. We're not like a physical instrument that is there, that has no personality. That's why we are people. We have a personality, absolutely. Yeah.
The subtitle of your book is Connect to Many, Engage Individuals.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by this?
Yeah. What I already said, that is that the customer base is a cloud. So that's many, connect to many. So every business, in the past, businesses had a choice, and they had to make a choice. And it was either I connect to many, the fact that I connect to many, then I lose my ability to engage the individual. Because then I go for mass communication, or we call it mass communication, but it was no communication, because communication is two-way. But if you start mass communication, you do broadcasting, and broadcasting is one-directional. So big companies, and if you wanted to get bigger as a company, you wanted to scale as a company, the only thing you had was mass communication, was broadcasting. So connect to many, or engage individuals. And that or engage individuals was what smaller companies could do, that was engaging individuals. But you couldn't combine it. Although big companies try to, and I've been working for big companies, and I've done exactly the same stuff. Companies started to segment their customers in a trial to get closer to that engaged individuals, or we started creating personas. I've done that like hell, and you tell yourself that you're closer to your customers, but you're not. And then we started to develop customer journeys, and let's face it, it's good that we think about the customer journey, but there is no such thing as the customer journey, because it's always inside out. We're always thinking like the middleman. I do it for my customer base, connect to many, but not engaging individuals. So it was a choice. I think that in the future, interaction with your customers will be the combination, connect to many and at the same time engage individuals. Even more, the more you connect to many, the better you will be able to engage individuals in the future. And that has got to do with artificial intelligence and robotization. Because to create a clever brain, and let's say that we want as a company to create a clever brain for our customer interaction, you need loads of data, because you can only train a brain, like our human brain, with loads of data. So the more you connect to customers, the more data you collect about customers. Please don't use the data to upsell, cross-sell or deep sell, but use the data to feed that brain and to train that brain to better engage customers. And then that brain can use a small data of the one-on-one customer interaction to do clever stuff for that specific customer. Mm-hmm. So in the future, it will be connect to many and engage individuals. And companies that can crack that code faster than competition. Now I'm talking about competition. I don't like to talk about competition. There is no more competition. Everybody's competing and nobody's competing. It's about cracking that code, and companies that can crack that code will not only survive, but will kind of win in the future.
Okay, so the winning companies will be the ones that connect to many and engage individuals.
Yeah, those that are able to crack that code, and cracking that code means that you do a lot of the daily stuff, of the process-driven stuff with your customers, based on digitization, based on artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, with deep learning, that brain is not only trained with big data, but is also trained by every small interaction, because it makes the brain more and more clever. The advantage of artificial intelligence is also that it doesn't start from assumptions, but it starts from the data. Especially in this space, it's going to be people that assist artificial intelligence. I'm not a believer that companies will be able to connect to many engaged individuals without the interaction of human to human. But I think that the humans in a company will make the final difference, the final point of difference between a good company and a company that's not as good in customer interaction.
And why is that?
I think that because I think that we always need in human interaction, there always needs to be some friction, there always needs to be some serendipity, some unpredictability, some mistakes, some errors to make it real. And an artificial intelligence will try to do the best by definition. We will miss the human interaction. I think that and translating, I think that one of the big issues for artificial intelligence is how do you tell an artificial intelligence and how you train it to understand values and values of a company. Yeah. And I think that people will, for a long time, be far better in translating values of a company than computers will.
It's interesting what you're saying. Do you know the movie The Matrix?
Yeah, I know.
In The Matrix, at a certain point, the Neo, Thomas Anderson meets the architect, and the architect explains that the first Matrix that he built was the perfect Matrix, but people couldn't accept it because it was faultless.
Yeah.
So you have to you need a bit.
You need that
struggle.
friction. You need that friction. You need look at a normal relationship. If in a relationship you do everything right, it becomes so boring.
Yeah.
It needs to have that friction from time to time.
So we need to live in an imperfect world to be happy as a human being.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I read that you say it's a myth that companies can change in an exponential way.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think that I wrote that because when companies say we need to change in an exponential way, they try to put that into a model, try to put that into a system to grow in an exponential way. I think that growing in an exponential way, by definition, is a more organic happening than it is a process-driven happening. It starts with chaos. And so if you don't create chaos, there will never be exponential growth. And companies don't like to hear that you say that first you need to create chaos before you can grow very fast. You will never grow fast by putting into a model, by definition, because the model takes too much energy and chaos creates energy. So you have to create chaos. And the best way to create chaos in a company is, to me, is to allow your pirates within the company. Normally, if we have pirates in the company, people that think differently, people that come up with crazy ideas, people that don't agree with the top-down instructions all the time. In most of the companies, we try to squeeze them into, no, you have to stay in your box, you have to play along the rules. And we're going to rewrite the rules, and then you have a little bit more of playing field, but that's not enough. So I think that every company should more or less allow their own pirates, and should try to catch up with the pirates instead of trying to bring the pirates again within the company. And that is that's a big challenge. But I think that companies that embrace that can grow faster, and I don't know whether they can grow exponentially, but can grow faster than competition. Allow your pirates.
So what does a pirate look like? How do you recognize them within your company?
They're passionately curious. I think that these are pirates. If you're passionately curious, you always question the status quo. You always question, is this right? Can't we do that better? And better doesn't mean like incrementally better than what we do today. That's good, but that's not enough. It's more like, can we look at it from a different perspective? Can we really rethink? Can we decompose the elements and put them back together in a completely different way? And that is like a pirate, because that's mutiny. And you have to allow some mutiny in the company. And the extent to which you allow mutiny, that depends from environment to environment. But I'm a strong believer that without chaos, there will be no change. You need chaos to create the energy that you need to create change. Absolutely.
So how do you make what you are saying practical when you are a leader or a top team? What are the key functions of a more progressive organization when you want to be the flock of birds? What are the do's and don'ts?
I think that the most important for a business leader and for a company is your set of values. Who am I? What am I? What is my purpose? Because if a company needs to be very flexible, that means that you need some point where it all comes together. You need some anchor where this is our starting point. And the starting point is no longer our processes and procedures, which used to be the starting point for most companies, because that takes away your flexibility. So if you are a leader without strong values and without a strong purpose, you not only look like, but you are a leader without, you do this and then you do that. It seems like, and you are like, you have no sense of what you're doing. But if you try to follow your customers, and today you do A, and tomorrow you do A little bit different, or you do B, or you do even do Z, but if it all starts from the same purpose and the same set of values, it makes sense. So I think that process-driven organizations need to be replaced by value-driven organizations. It's more about do I have a set of values? Do my people in my company understand, but not only understand, but live the set of values of the company? And I think it's up to every company to define its own set of values and not to create them. I see so many companies now that create, let's sit together and let's create the values of the company. By definition, that's impossible. You cannot create the values of a company. The values of a company are the values of a company. You can try to detect them, you can try to define them.
How can you detect them?
Again, by being very aware of what you do, what you are. Most companies bury themselves in processes and procedures, then you don't have to think about it. Everything is a checklist. We live checklist management. I did it myself for so long, and I've always realized I was doing checklist management. You have a checklist and you check, and if everything is green, then you do a good job. To be honest, you don't need managers to do that. You can do that with machines. They're far better managers. If that was management, then do it with machines. Management is something completely different.
So when you look at yourself, at your current self,
yeah.
And most people have most of the time it's unconscious, but most people have a desired self as well. So if you just think about your desired self, what is the gap between your desired self and your current self? So what is the next step in your change of mindset?
One thing I know for sure, the gap has never been as narrow as it is now. I feel very much at ease for the moment in who I am. And if I look back at previous positions and previous stadia in my life, that I used to be far off my own personal self. Not that you feel unhappy, but you realize it later on.
Yeah.
And that is the second element. You realize it only later on. So I feel like the gap is never been as narrow. So I feel pretty much in tune with that ideal self. But maybe in 5 years' time I say, yeah, but I was still far off. But I don't feel it like that for the moment. I feel pretty much at ease.
And how come that you're in that place right now?
Part of it is, there's two elements. First of all, I've never settled in something. I'm a big fan of the book Geography of Thought, which explains the difference between the Western mindset and the Eastern mindset. And I've written a piece about it not long ago, and a blog about it. And I end with saying, I only now realize that my mind is more like an Eastern mind than it is like a Western mind. Every time I end up in a situation, for me that's not the start of, okay, now I'm going to do that for the next 5 or 10 years. For me that's the situation where I think, okay, what's next? So I always had that type of mindset. So that has created the fact that I was constantly in motion. That's the first, and the second element is luck. There's always a number of elements, a number of happenings in your life that you have no control of, whether you call it faith or whatever. And I do believe that your mindset and the fact that you're in motion creates more opportunities and makes you more open for happenings and for using the happenings, because if you have a fixed mindset, then you might encounter the same happenings, but you don't do anything with it. I've always grabbed the opportunity, not in an opportunistic way, but more like, hey, it passes, it is here, it crosses my path. Why does it cross my path? Why not change my path because I crossed this? But then you have to be in motion, because if you're not in motion, you have no opportunity, or you don't even see the opportunity to do that. But luck is part of it. I'm pretty sure about that. I've been lucky.
But partly you create your own luck, I understand.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sounds pretentious that you can kind of dream your own future, but if I look back at my, I don't like to call it career, I don't have a career, my path, there's many things that happened on that path that I kind of dreamt of, and then it happens. So there must be a reason, and I think it's not because you dream it that it happens, but because you dream it, your mindset is as such that you pick up the elements that can lead you to realizing that dreams because you dream it. That's exactly, again, that slow architecture, that building of a cathedral. If you're building a cathedral, and if you want a cathedral to be as big and as huge and as high as possible, all the new building techniques that can lead to that, you adapt them. You say, oh, I need to rearrange, I need to re-engineer how I'm going to build that cathedral because that is going to help me. If you already have your fixed plan, then you don't even notice or you ignore that new building techniques.